All right, guys, let's talk about keyword research inside of Ahrefs. If you're using SEMrush, it's also going to be applicable to you. Ahrefs will just have their own style of reports and metrics, but if you're following with SEMrush or Ubersuggest, most things will be quite similar. So let's get in there. So once we're inside of Ahrefs, we're going to click into the Keywords Explorer. Now, what do we see? So we can basically select which search engine we'd like to search in. We're most likely only going to be using Google. The YouTube one isn't really there yet. YouTube keyword research is quite tough. YouTube is going to be one of the last chapters of this course. So we'll talk about it. But for our purposes for this course, we're going to be talking about keyword research inside of Google, right? Another thing we can do here is we can basically select which country we'd like to perform this keyword research in. And this is really valuable because we'd like to know the different search volumes and competitions in each different country, right? Because maybe I'm in Spain and I'd like to create content in Spanish and I want to know what are the volumes for specific keywords in Spain, right? So nice little feature here. We have the number of weekly reports that are left, and these are some keyword lists that you can create once you do some keyword research. Let's start off with our example keyword, vegan brownie recipe. So there's two things that we need to talk about inside of keyword research, right? So one is keyword data and the second one is keyword research. So what is keyword data? So keyword data is the actual report that's going to come up, as you guys can see on my screen right now, when we type in that keyword inside of Ahrefs or inside of any other tool, right? It's this overview of that specific keyword, right? So we're going to get a bunch of really high quality data that's going to give us everything we need to know about this keyword, right? Let's start from left to right. So we're now looking at the keyword difficulty and we're getting this number, which is exactly what I said was lacking in the free tools, right? We don't actually know how hard some of these keywords might be with those free tools and extensions, right? And so Ahrefs actually gives you an estimate of 56 backlinks to rank in the top 10 for this keyword, right? So they're talking about that authority. We're going to be talking about authority and link building in the next chapter. But for now, just know that Ahrefs basically gives us this number that allows us to understand whether a keyword is difficult or not, right? So let's move on to the next thing. So this is the volume, right? And so now this is the average monthly number of searches for a keyword over the latest known 12 months of data, right? We're getting 5.5 monthly searches. We see the trend as well over the last few years, how it's grown, how it's shrunk. And then we have the clicks, right? So these are the actual number of estimated clicks that Ahrefs is getting for this specific volume. We have the cost per click. Again, it's that metric that we were talking about for Google Ads, right? So how much are people willing to pay to put up an ad and for that click? So $2.50. And then we have this metric, clicks per search, right? So this is an interesting metric, and this basically explains why Ahrefs is telling us that the monthly volume is 5.5 thousand, but the actual clicks are 8,000, right? How does that make any sense? Well, that's where this specific metric comes in. So clicks per search. So what this is saying is that on average, a person that looks up this specific keyword is going to click into more than one website, right? And that's why there's more clicks than actual searches for this specific keyword, right? So that could be for a variety of reasons. Maybe people aren't happy with the first, second, third result, so they like to explore. Maybe it's a search term that requires more than one resource to confirm specific things. It could be a variety of reasons. It's not really a good or bad thing, but it is interesting to know that there often are more clicks than the actual volume, right? And it's good to know this specific metric. Next, we have the traffic potential, right? So let's just read this right here. So it shows the sum of organic traffic that the #1 ranking page for your target keyword receives. And so this is an interesting topic because when you rank for one keyword, especially if it's a big keyword, you're not only going to be ranking for that keyword. If you guys remember short tail versus long tail, there are a lot of keywords that will start in a short tail, but we'll also have a very huge collection of long tail keywords that are also relevant for that main keyword, right? And so when this specific result, noracooks.com, is ranking for vegan brownies, so that's the parent topic that these guys are ranking for, they're also coming up first or doing quite well for vegan brownie recipe, right? These keywords are very similar, very well connected, right? So Ahrefs is giving us that estimated traffic potential, basically saying if you were to rank #1 for this keyword, you would also take over all these smaller keywords that you can't really see right now. So this is the total traffic potential if you were to do well in this keyword, right? So 7.5K of monthly organic traffic, that's pretty solid. You can definitely build a business off that. Now let's talk about the global volume here for a second. So this is a breakdown of all the top countries in terms of search volume, right? So the US clearly has the most search volume for this specific keyword, 39%, 5.5 thousand monthly searches. Then we have the UK, 3.7, Australia, 900, so on and so forth. We can keep scrolling here and see all the different countries and their respective search volumes. Now, we have this section of keyword ideas. We're going to be talking about this right after this specific mini lesson, so no need to worry about that right now. Then we have position history. So this is actually really, really interesting. We're going to talk about this in part 2 of keyword research once we talk a little bit about authority and link building. But this is basically the top 10 results and how it's basically shifting up and down, right? Or sorry, this is the top 100 results, but I can actually click into the top 10 and I can just see how that shifts up and down, how people are moving, what's the fluctuation. And this is actually really interesting to know because we can see what people are doing. Maybe there's a day that a competitor got one specific link and then they shot up, right? Can we do something about that link? Can we go after it? What exactly have they done? So this is really interesting to see the fluctuation and see if there's anything we can get from that. But anyway, more on this later. We then have a little section here, ads position history. Looks like it isn't working right now. There are no ads for this specific period for this keyword, but this is usually really interesting. We'll see other keywords where this is working, but we basically see the positioning of different competitors running ads. So it's actually really, really interesting to see who's running ads, who isn't, who's only depending on organic search. And then we have the SERP overview. So if you guys are gonna hear the word SERP quite often in this course and in the SEO space. SERP means search engine result page, right? So these are just basically the results that are being presented for that keyword vegan brownie recipe, right? We get the date, so we can select which date, so we'll know the fluctuations. Again, we saw that chart before. But what we have here is basically a 1 to 10 of the websites that are ranking for these keywords, right? So a lot of different metrics here. We're going to talk about all of this in chapter 2. We do need to talk a little bit about authority, but very, very interesting to see who's ranking. We can click down here and it'll give us the top 100, right? So this guy's ranking 100. We can see exactly what they're doing. So very, very interesting. It's very cool to have access to this data. That's why I always recommend to pay for these tools if we're able to, because it speeds up our learning. It speeds up the data we have access to. And with more data, we're able to make more educated decisions, right? Cool. So now that we've covered the keyword data side of things, let's talk about keyword research. See you guys in just a second.